students. Today I'm going to discuss some basic anatomical terminology which are related to anatomical study of human physiology, human body. These terms are very important to study anatomy and body position, body location, like we are going to study in this video lecture. Body position, regional names, directional terms, body cavities, and planes and sections. So these are the topics which are discussed in this video lecture. We will talk some basic details related to these terms. We will also discuss why they are important, what are their definitions, where they are present. These are very much important for the understanding of anatomical study and body organ. If you are studying body organ, body position, any terms in the anatomy is very important. So please watch my full video so that you can understand each and every term, and these terms will be very helpful for your understanding anatomy, physiology in the life ahead in your future studies. So here scientists and healthcare professionals use the common language of special terms when referring to body structures and their functions. The language of anatomy they use has precisely defined meanings that allows us to communicate clearly and precisely. So body position, we are going to study first body position. The description of any region or part of human body assumes that it is in a standard position of reference called the anatomical position. So this is the definition of anatomical position. Say regional or any parts of the human body that is it is in standard position of reference. Whenever we refer any body, it is in its standard position, and the study is called anatomical position. In the anatomical position, the subject stands erect, facing the observer. If you are observer, you are studying any subject, any body, it should be stand erect with the hands level, eye facing directly forward. The lower limbs are parallel and feet are flat on the floor and directed forward, and the upper limbs are at the side with the palms turned forward. The two terms describes a reclining body when the body is reclining. If the body is lying face down you understand the face is uh, the body face is facing downward, earth facing to earth. It is in a prone position. If the body is lying face up, facing to sky, body's face is facing to sky, it is in the spine position. So this is the two basic position. Here regional names, we study regional names. The human body is divided into several major regions. You already have studied regions that can be identified externally. The principal regions are the head, neck, trunk, upper limb, and lower limbs. These are the basic and primary principal regions which you all know. These are very common, but the basic of any body, human body. Head, you understand, the head consists of the skull and the face. The skull encloses and protects the brain, and the face is in the front portion of the head. That includes eyes, nose, mouth, forehead, cheeks, and chin. These are the parts, or these are the regions which are present in your skull and your head. Brain is present inside the skull. Head includes eyes, pair of eyes, nose, mouth, forehead, cheeks, and chin. You all know it. The neck supports the head and attaches it to the trunk. The trunk consists of chest, abdomen, and pelvis. So trunk is the main part of the middle part, or it consists of chest, abdomen, and pelvis. Each upper limb attaches to the trunk and consists of shoulder, armpit, arm, portion of the limbs from the shoulder to the elbow, forearm, portion of the limb from the elbow to the wrist and hand. So this is uh, some basic terms regarding regional names. The lower limbs also attaches to the trunk and consist of the buttock, thigh portion of the limb, that from the buttock to the knee, legs, portion of the limb from the knee to the ankle and foot. These are the parts of the lower limbs. The lower limb is attached to the hip region, to the trunk. The groin area is area on the front surface of the body marked by crease on each side where the trunk attached to the thigh. Uh, thigh, Wherever the thigh attached to the trunk region, the region is called groin area. In these two figures, all the major parts which we have discussed earlier in the slide has been labeled, so you can locate by reading, by seeing, looking the places, like you already know body parts, human body parts. So these are the basic body parts, external body parts. Like this is a cephalic region, means head region. It contains cranial, skull, and facial face region. So cephalic head region consists of face and skull, as we have studied. Cervical neck region, the neck from the base of the head to the starting point of the this trunk region. And the trunk region. Trunk region has further three divisions: thoracic region, that is chest region; abdominal, that is abdomen; and the pelvic or pelvis. So trunk has further three divisions by the name thoracic, abdominal, and pelvic region. So these are the cephalic, head, uh, or cervical, neck, trunk region, and last, these are the limbs, lower limbs, and these are the side forearm, you can say, or digital or phalanges like our manual hand, and these are the lower limb. The upper limb have further location like armpit, between this is joint between the trunk and the upper limb. The brachial arm, that is antecubital, and the antebrachial forearm, carpals, palmar or gommer, palm, phalanges or disc. These are the sub-regions, sub-parts of arm. Similarly, their thigh, femoral bone or thigh, patellar region, knee, you can say this is a knee region, crural or leg region, pedal or foot region has tarsal, ankle, distal or phalangeal or toe. So this is the anterior view. There are also some labeling over here, like very detailed, minute, frontal, temporal region, orbit. These are the locations you can easily understand by reading these terms. Similarly, you see posterior view, the dorsal or the back region. Similarly, cephalic, cervical, upper limb, lower limb, trunk, the dorsal back, lumbar region, occipital back, base of the skull, scapular shoulder bone, vertical column, spinal column, pectoral or cubital, back of the elbow, sacral between the hips, sacral region, sacral bone, gluteal buttock, and the perianal renal region of the anus and the external genital. So, popliteal, hollow behind knee, and sural, that is calf, and plantar, that is sole, or calcaneal, that is heel. So these are some terms, anatomical positions, names and corresponding common names which are present in the parenthesis bracket are indicated for specific body regions, like cephalic head is the head region. I hope you have gone through all these terms and understand very well. There are some directional terms also regarding position, or can say directional terms. If there is term superior, that is cephalic or cranial. Superior means towards the head or the upper part of the structure. If the body upper part we are talking about, we will say it is superior body part. And example are the heart is the superior to the liver. If heart is present, heart and liver, we are discussing about the heart is always superior to the liver. It means liver is below the inferior the heart, and heart is superior above the liver. Similarly, inferior or caudal, away from the head. Inferior, away from the head, we can say, or lower part of the structure. The stomach is inferior to the lungs, so means below, down, below, to the side of, to the near of tail region. Stomach is inferior to the lungs. Anterior region, we can say, nearer to or to the in the front of the body, like sternum or breastbone is anterior to the heart. Anteriorly, same posterior, opposite is the posterior, means dorsal region, nearer to the back of the body. When we are talking about the back, we will use the term posterior, like esophagus, food tube is posterior to the trachea, that is windpipe. If we are talking about nearer to the midline or an imaginary vertical line that divides the body into equal right and left side, so we will use the term medial. Okay, the ulna is medial to the radius. So example like ulna is medial to the radius. Lateral region, lateral direction, lateral position, we can means farther from the midline. When our organ is away farther from the midline, so we can refer it as it is present laterally. Like our hands are lateral, lungs are lateral to the heart side, both sides. Lungs are present. Lateral means side to the left or right side to the heart. So both sides. Intermediate between two structures. When we are talking about any structure which is present in between the two, then we will use the term intermediate. The transverse column is intermediate to the ascending and descending column. This is example of transverse column. Location of transverse or position of the transverse column. We will use the term intermediate for this transverse column. That is, transverse column is intermediate, means between two structures, that is ascending and descending column. Similarly, here ipsilateral means on the same side of the body as anterior structure. On the same side, two structure are on the same side, like gallbladder and ascending column are ipsilateral. Though both are on the same side. Ipsilateral means on the same side of the body as another structure. Same contralateral on the opposite side of the body from one another. The ascending and descending column are contralateral. One is forward, other is backward, or we can say one is lateral, left side, and other is right side. So we use term contralateral. Proximal, nearer to the attachment of a limb to the structure. When we are talking about attachment, it's attachment where it is attached to the main body, main trunk. So it is nearer to the attachment or main body trunk. It is called proximal, nearer to the originating of the structure, wherever it is attached, or whenever it is nearer to the midline. So it is proximal. The humerus arm bone is proximal to the radius, means humerus is nearer to the main body line, midline, attachment point as compared to the radius. The radius is far away, so we will use for that which organs are far away is distal. Distal. The further from the attachment of the limb is to the trunk, or farther away from the origination of the structure. For example, phalanges, finger bones are distal to the carpals wrist bone. Means wrist bones are at fingers are at last away from the place of origin, like our uh, shoulder bone. So phalanges, finger bones are distal to the carpal. We are comparing it with the carpal. When we are comparing it with the carpals, then we use the term distal, means away, very much away, very much far from the point of origin. Superficial is a term used towards or on the surface of the body. The ribs are superficial to the lungs. Superficial means on the surface of the body. Same opposite is deep internal. Superficial, for superficial we can use external, and deep internal. Away from the surface of the body, deep inside. The ribs are deep to the skin of the chest and back. So these are some directional terms which are related to the body position, body. um, when we are study about anatomy, location or position of the organs. So these are the terms which are important to remember. Here there are directional terms as we have discussed in the previous slide. In this diagram, we can clearly understand, like this one is a midline. You see here, line, midline, center to the body axis. So midline, median, if the any organ present away, left or right to this midline is called lateral position. Lateral, laterally arranged, laterally positioned, lateral structures. If the body organ which is present upside to the head side, cephalic region, it is called superior, and if it is present away from the head or towards the tail, it is called inferior. And if the body organ is attached to the body trunk or point of attachment, nearer to the point of attachment, it is called proximal, means near. And if it away from this point of attachment to the trunk, central body axis, it is called distal. So I think you studied it very well, understand it very clearly. Next, we will talk about the planes and section. We are studying about anatomy. We are studying about sectioning, as we also have discussed positions, directional terms. Here are the terms used in the planes and sections. So first is the sagittal plane. A sagittal plane is a vertical plane that divides the body or an organ into right and left side. Sagittal plane is a plane which is vertical from head to tail. If the body is actually erect and vertical standing, so we use the term sagittal plane, which divides body equally into two halves or three halves. So it is sagittal plane. More specifically, when such a plane passes through the midline of the body or an organ and divides it into equal right and left side. If we are talking mainly it very specifically, so this sagittal plane should pass to the vertical plane that is present to the midline of the body, and this plane divides equally into two parts, left and right side, and it is called mid-sagittal plane. When it is dividing two equal halves, it is called mid-sagittal plane or medial plane. The midline is an imaginary vertical line that divides the body into equal left and right sides. If the sagittal plane does not pass through the midline, but instead divides the body or an organ into unequal right and left side, it is called a parasagittal plane. Para means near. Similarly, frontal or coronal plane that divides the body or an organ into anterior and posterior portion. If a plane that divides a body into anterior and posterior portion, so this kind of plane is called coronal or frontal. A transverse plane divides the body or an organ into superior, upper, and inferior, that is lower portion. And other names for a transverse plane also a cross-sectional or horizontal plane. So transverse plane divides the body into superior, upper, and inferior, lower portion. And for this also use the term cross-sectional or horizontal plane. Sagittal, frontal, and transverse plane are all right angle to one another. It is very much important to remember it. and understand it that the sagittal, frontal, and transverse planes are all at right angle to one another, and oblique, by contrast, passes through the body or an organ at any oblique angle, at any angle other than 90-degree angle. So this kind of plane is called oblique plane. So in this figure, all the terms which we have discussed will be clear, will make you understand clearly. Like there is a plane, mid-sagittal plane, which divide the body right and left side equally, right and left in two equal halves. So this plane is mid-sagittal plane, that is through midline. This plane, frontal plane, means divides the body equally or unequally, you can say equally, back and front. So divides the body into back and front in two equal parts. Means passes from one lateral side to the second. And if the line passing away from the mid position, mid-sagittal plane, this is called parasagittal plane. And transverse plane, if a line passes to the midline and divides the body upper and lower, superior and inferior into equal half, it is called transverse section. Equal or unequal you can say, but divides the body, and where you can see there is a 90-degree angle between transverse section and the mid section. And also parasagittal plane, it has 90-degree angle. And also frontal plane and mid-sagittal plane also there is an angle between 90 degree between sagittal plane and mid-sagittal plane. There is an angle of 90 degree. And similarly, frontal plane and this transverse plane there is an angle of 90 degree. And look over here, sagittal plane, sorry, oblique plane. There is not any 90-degree angle. It is any degree except 90 degree. So in any plane, you can cut the body, section the body, which is not equal to 90-degree angle to any other plane. It's called oblique plane. So this one is the anterior view. In this diagram of figure, you see it is brain and divides mid-sagittal plane into equal half. It will look like this. This is one half of the brain, mid-sagittal section. We will see it, call it mid-sagittal section of brain, and this is whole complete brain. If you are viewing from this side, you are standing from this side, you are looking to this brain from here. Similarly, in B, you see brain, and there is a plane, frontal plane, means this one is the you are seeing from here. Viewing this diagram from here, and then is a plane. So this and cut the brain. So brain will look like this. This is frontal section. Means anterior and posterior part of the brain. Two parts of the brain will be divided by frontal plane into anterior and posterior. Section will look like this. Similarly, if brain is you are viewing from the top, and the section or transverse section cut from this plane, this one is the anterior portion of the brain and this one is the posterior portion of the brain, and you are transverse sectioning this brain via transverse plane. So you are seeing it from the top. So brain will look like this in this structure, look like this structure when you are seeing from the top of the brain, and this section is called transverse section. So think you have understood this planes through the human body. These are the different planes which are very much important to study. So now we will talk about body cavities. These were the positions, directional terms. Now we are going to talk about body cavities. So there are cavity spaces, empty spaces, fluid spaces which are present inside the body, which are called body cavity, like here. Body cavities are spaces that encloses internal organ, bones, muscles, ligaments, and other structures separate the various body cavities from one another. So in the body there are bones, muscles, ligaments, and other structures that separate body into another from one another, one to other, and one another. Like here, the cranial bone form a hollow space of the head called the cranial cavity. So there is a cavity in the brain or the skull which is called cranial cavity in which brain is located. Soft, delicate portion of the body part that is brain, which is located in the cranial cavity. The cranial cavity is made up of bony structure, very tough. The bones of the vertebral column, that is backbone, forms the vertebral or spinal canal, which contains the spinal cord. So from the head, from the brain part, there is a cord-like structure, cord of nerves, neurons, or the brain's process run through the vertebral column, through the inside the vertebral or spinal canal, which is very much delicate, so it needs protection from the shock. So it is protected or enclosed inside the bony structure that is vertebral column or backbone. The cranial cavity and the vertebral canal are continuous with one another. So cranial cavity means brain located in the cavity, that is cranial cavity, and the vertebral canal which encloses spinal cord. So brain and spinal cord are interconnected with each other. So cavities are also interconnected with each other, that is they are continuous with each other. Three layers of protective tissue, that is meninges, and a shock absorbing fluid surround the brain and spinal cord. So as I discussed, the brain is a very much delicate organ, delicate, very much soft tissue, made up of very much soft tissues. So it needs protection from jerk, any kind of injury, needs cushion-like structure, so shock absorber structure. So fluid inside these cavities keep the soft organs floating inside the cavities. So protective tissues like meninges and absorbing fluid like cerebrospinal fluid protect the brain and the spinal cord. The major body cavities of the trunk are thoracic and abdominopelvic cavities. So these two are the major body cavities. The thoracic cavities or the chest cavity is formed by the ribs, muscles of the chest, sternum, and the thoracic portion of the vertebral column. So thoracic cavity is made up of chest cavity, which is also called chest cavity, and is formed by the muscles of the chest, sternum, breastbone, and the thoracic portion of the vertebral column. Within the thoracic cavity are paracardial cavity. Inside the thoracic cavity are paracardial, means location of heart, position of heart. Heart is located in this paracardial cavity. Cardial means heart. A fluid-filled space that surrounds the heart, and two fluid-filled space called pleural cavity, one around each lung. So, pleural cavity, pericardial cavity are present inside the thoracic cavity. So, thorax contains two delicate soft organs, that is lungs and the heart. Very much important, very delicate, very soft, but very tough. And heart is pumping the blood, and lungs filters, respire, breathe, help in breathing, exchange of gases. So these two organs are very much important. So they need protection. Even they are also protected by the bony cage-like structure, thoracic bony cage-like structure, sternum, rib cage. The central part of the body cavity is the abdominal region called the mediastinum, means media, middle, stium portion. It is the it is between the lungs, extending from the sternum to the vertebral column and from the first rib of the diaphragm. So it is it in between the sternum, vertebral column, from the first rib of the diaphragm. So this figure explain all the cavities which we have discussed in the previous slide. So see over here, yellow color. This is the cranial cavity and the vertebral column. This is spinal cord. Both are continuous with each other, brain and the spinal cord. This yellow color is this outer covering is the bony structure, spinal cord, vertebral column which protects spinal cord, and this skull cranial cavity protects the brain inside the cranial cavity. Similarly, over in the lateral view, this one is the right lateral view, and this one is the anterior view. From lateral side, the body cavity look like this. If we dissect whole body part in equal half, and if we look from the front side by dividing the body by lateral position, lateral part, lateral section, lateral plane. So from the front, this is the thoracic cavity which encloses heart and lungs, and this one is the abdominal cavity which encloses the liver, gallbladder, and alimentary canal, and all. Pelvic region over here. So these are the cavity. Let's study about them. Like cranial cavity, formed by cranial bones and contains brain. Vertebral canal formed by vertebral column and contains spinal cord and beginning of the spinal nerves. So yellow color, you see yellow color over here. The thoracic cavity, this one. The chest cavity contains pleural and pericardial cavity and the mediastinum. Similarly, pleural cavity, if we talk about a portion space between the layers of the pleura that surrounds a lungs. The pleural cavity, that is cavity present outside surrounding of the lungs. The pericardial cavity, a portion, a potential space between layers of the pericardium that surrounds heart. So heart, lungs, both are protected inside this cavity, thoracic cavity, and there is a mediastinum. Central portion of the thoracic cavity between the lungs extend from the sternum to the vertebral column, and from first rib to the diaphragm contains heart, thymus, esophagus, trachea, and several large blood vessels. So these are the spaces in the cavity which contain these other organ except heart, midstream, abdominopelvic cavity. So it's as its name indicates, abdominal cavity and pelvic region. So subdivided into abdominal and pelvic cavities. Abdominal cavity contains stomach, spleen, liver, gallbladder, small intestine, and most of the large intestine. The serous membrane of abdominal cavity is the peritoneum, sorry. And the pelvic cavity contains urinary bladder, portion of the large intestine, and internal organ of the reproduction. So these are the body cavities and the organ which are located, which are positioned in these cavities and are protected in these cavities. So I think this is over. Thank you very much. Please like this video, share to your friends who are in need of this kind of video. Please subscribe my channel for this kind of informative video. Thanks a lot.